Okay, so if you're a chauvinist weirdo, you're trying to get the key to the city that is women, and key to the city that is dominance, and key to the city that is respect from other men. It's very easy to hear opinionated doofus going on and on and on about how women respond to sex. Now, here's the problem. A lot of that's cultural, but a lot of that's also individual. So, one person may just as, you go to dinner, and not everybody wants to eat the same thing. One person gets the shits when they have a salad, another person gets the shits when they have pork, another person may at one point experience a pork allergy and their body may go ahead and fix it. That's normal. That's normal work with allergens. Now, the same type of thing happens with sex. So sometimes people will want something and the next door neighbor will not. Part of the joy of variance is being able to find what you want. It also helps people not be so territorial. Things are not just, there are many like it, but this one is yours, and don't look at it because I'm going to kill you. It's more of a thing of exploring what works for you at that time, and also what works between the two of you more. Now, when we go ahead and actually start aggrandizing control, what we do is we end up having these weird little screwed up people who are searching for themselves, finding a rule and a rubric that is black and white enough to feel safe. That desire to feel safe is not ethics. That desire to feel safe is not morality, and it's also not effective. The best thing to go ahead and actually explain this is imagine someone, well, if you don't know how to cook, that doesn't work. Okay. When we go ahead and actually, say, operate a moving vehicle, then if you see the speed limit is 55, you see where you're allowed to drive. What we're effectively doing is driving on ice, driving on nice sunny days, driving on pine needles with a motorcycle, driving on all kinds of different obstacles, and all of a sudden there's things that run out in front of you. A deer running out in front of you is going to get a different response than, say, a box that may or may not be empty. Is going to get a different response than something that you could tell is empty, like a flattened box. So when you go ahead and actually are learning to drive, you don't learn 55 straight ahead, drive down the center of the road, brake this exact way. You learn to drive defensively, but also artistically within the science of driving. You learn things, for instance, in motorcycle class, you learn about pine needles being high risk. You learn about grass clippings. Makes you a better neighbor. Makes you a better neighbor because you won't be the douchebag that pours those clippings on the ground. I actually caught someone doing it the other day. This dumping intentionally grass clippings all over the front of the road right in front of their home. And that kind of stuff is not mischief or chaos. That's just plain old crime. That there's a difference between, that's not creating chaos, that's not creating mischief, that's not civil disobedience, that's just plain old being a dick. If you're not going after an individual, you're not being a hero, you're not killing baby Hitler, you're not doing all these type of things. But you're also not listening. If we want to go ahead and kill that, we already realize what works. We can go ahead and go through the Maslow's, hierarchy of needs. We can go through what works in societal creation. We know that what works is a heterogeneous society. We know that that is something to be proud of. We know that's something to be celebratory about, but also very, very proactive about creating each day. If we don't get that, then what we want is carbon copies and cookie cutters. Now, when we do the cookie cutter, it's effectively like saying, I have one driving skill, so therefore I'm going to pop on a motorcycle and treat it exactly like a car, not leaning into curves, not doing any of these type of things, and going straight through grass clippings. Now, if you ride a motorcycle, you know exactly where that's going to get you. Same type of thing with society or with lovers. A lot of you are taking a motorcycle straight through grass clippings because you think that is authority. That's not authority. Now, here's one thing you also have to understand. Authority is also not dumping grass clippings in there for the lulz. That's not funny to anybody. Now, one thing that you have to realize is that artistic bent of using the science creates a need for more information. If all you get is 55 miles an hour, here's the road lines, you don't get that much. But if you know things like, for instance, how your tires are going to work, how a rear-wheel drive car works versus a front-wheel drive car, if you know the approximate weight of the vehicle you're driving and things like this, you adjust. That's why I didn't drive my RV 100 miles an hour. But I have done that in safe conditions in proper places. For instance, places in Montana where there is no stop speed limit. That on a bright day with absolutely no obstacles is not going to be something that causes a lot of grief compared to doing that in an RV in heavy traffic. Knowing this teaches you how to be more responsible. It also gives you a better day. It also helps you be a much more skilled driver. And I think we've all been in the car with somebody who is very anxious and, drive through Charlotte, people braking and speeding up, braking, speeding up, braking, speeding up. That is the exact type of behavior I can't stand. No one likes driving through Charlotte when people act that way. It's notorious. But if people go ahead and take it in hand and just ease into it and, even straighten the curves a little sometimes, but also know when we're not to do that. They also know how to go ahead and navigate around hazards. I've gotten actual tell before with that because, you're able to navigate around something because you're able to defensively drive, but you're also able to know how your car behaves. Now, that's something that makes me mad about the whole situation with the wreck. Last time I saw Matt, he came over and dropped off something that tasted funny. He said he had a surprise for me. He also brought me single rose. Now, we're not in a relationship. He has this kind of gay butler sort of relationship with me where I feel comfortable accepting a flower that way, but a gas station red rose almost comes off kind of like a signature from a hit. Right after that, my body, which is unique, but also of a different, when you go do the fast food things, and you mark other, the original meaning of white doesn't mean sometimes Caucasian. But anyway, was not responding in the same way, not in a way that I have to be concerned with, but in a way it's a unique poison that is effective like salting a tail for a while. It will eventually work out its way out of my system, but it causes you to drive a little differently. You're not able to do certain things. And knowing that makes it to where, you enjoy what you're going through a little bit differently, but also you're able to adjust on the fly. Some people cannot adjust. And that lack of adjustment is creating toxic masculinity, toxic problems where people are so upset and strident about not creating problems and crime and hating on things. Some people hate hipsters. Some people hate, all kinds of different things like this. But it creates this rumor mill that sounds good, feels good, and eventually you start thinking non-attachment in Buddhism is removing a penis instead of actually being detached from the experience of penis enough to be able to enjoy it without it being a problem. The whole idea of just chopping it off means absolutely nothing to the Buddhist belief system. It's actually a slap in the face to it because instead of practicing non-attachment, what you're actually practicing is extreme attachment to strange things about a body part which really has a set amount of functions, and those set amount of functions need to be dealt with in ways that do not hurt people, and that is about pretty much the only rules, You can pee on the ground, but if you pee on something that doesn't need to be peed on, you're going to have a bad day. You can pee on someone's face, but someone doesn't like you peeing on their face, you're going to have a bad day. Even rules like that, there are times when I assume that would be something you might do to avoid war, but even that should be so unencouraged, but also not treated in the same way a lot of people would with sex offense of seeing someone peeing in the woods or something like that. There's parameters to not offend people that are easier navigated once you get that artistic side that allows you to understand form and how to follow through. Reconciling the unreconcilable is an Art Nouveau shout out, but it also is what we do every day with jazz. There's no wrong notes, only wrong resolutions. People say, oh, that means I'm excused with killing people. No, that's not what we're saying. But, of course, the rules of self-defense and things like this at a very, very conservative level have to be followed. Not, hey, let's just do it because we feel scared. That is absolutely the opposite of courage and has caused so much trouble in our neighborhoods that it really is like a war zone. And Chicago, that is not racist for me to talk about. That is saying that Chicago is having a bad problem. That is all it is. And that problem can be identified, can be corrected. And those problems are linked to lack of expectation, lack of cohesion, all this kind of stuff. But there are other things that are just as scary going on in different circles that we don't talk about. Now, if you know me, you know I talk about it. It doesn't mean I hate on you. It just means that I need to quit having people serving penises and hating on me eating a mushroom. You see what I'm saying? Now, another thing about this is people who are searching for themselves. It is really easy to get caught into failures and a brittle stricture inside of yourself, trying to go ahead and do the right thing. Everybody who's ever been in a war has pretty much tried to do the right thing. But the problem with war is that the connections that keep war from happening are broken. These get broken because people think that force and saying shut up is more important than actually listening and comprehending. This is why I had this argument with my cousin. Now, he goes and walks on my tour. And keep in mind, he's a Freemason. He's member of the House of Lords and all these different type of things. But anyway, he walks on my tour, and people are focusing on me trying to teach him about racism. Honey, no, it wasn't. What I was trying to say is if you cannot listen, then you use you use shortcuts and rubrics instead of actual understanding of what people are saying to patrol racism instead of to say no thank you to it. Now, he outed himself as a Klan, Akia. That is illegal in Britain. He said he's not allowed in Britain. What does that tell you? But one of the reasons is because it brings you in sedition to the crown, because it's actually trying to supplant a different crown in there. But one of the strongest things I can go ahead and say is if you can't understand, for instance, that a tar baby, and the use of, I created a tar baby to see how many people were not paying attention to actually being charitable to one another, and instead were faking it, then what you haven't done is respected the actual history of the people that you fake like you're trying to protect. That is actually a shibboleth. That's actually a way of making sure that people are actually on your side or have been exposed to that type of things. Now, with the shibboleth, basically this tribe knew that they spoke SH instead of S by itself. Think biggest dickus routine. And so they said, say shibboleth. And if you said shibboleth, you're like, oh, okay, you understand. You are fluent enough to go ahead and be able to be respectful. Same way as saying, what is a tar baby? If I get a brown person, nope, back of the line. You got that one wrong, okay? If someone says it is a allegory of a sticky object that people keep on attacking and getting more and more caught up in it, oh good, you've paid attention to multiple tribes. And those multiple tribes all have the same story, most likely are pointing to two things. First of all, the archetype of that situation. People who make tar are going to experience that. And they're going to talk about people get caught up in it. It's just an allegory. But also, it's international trade. Columbus didn't bring the diseases and all this international trade to bring chaos to the pedophile system that was keeping people locked down with FGM and pretending like they couldn't have sex because they had sex with an alien. Bullcrap. Okay? Um, it's actually revealing the fact that what happened was we had a bunch of people reveal there was world trade. And through doing so, he got in a little legal trouble by acting out. And the way he got acted out and got busted proves both authority within different native tribes and communication with native tribes, but also different ways of communication and movement. Now, this is one reason that Columbus Day has always been very well celebrated in color communities that have a lot of native in the background. But without that information, you forget that part, And you also don't understand the difference between different tribes trying to go ahead and silence other ones, unless you do. So the shibboleth situation needs two things. First of all, A, the ability to go ahead and actually understand what I'm talking about without thinking, ooh, Bible gross. And B, also the understanding that someone can walk through and say, I have a lisp, but I actually know it's the other thing with the H, I just can't pronounce it, should also be let through. So people are so quick to judge and so quick to think and so quick to jump to conclusions because it's a form of cheating. It's a form of cheating your way through, sounding just smart enough to go ahead and be able to sit down and escape censure. You know why we do that? Because we're subjected. When at any time, any loss of face, any loss of performative authority can make you have to go ahead and go back to being a commoner, so to speak, in front of your friends, or even get you deported or killed or maimed or, sent to gulag or sent to a ghetto, all these different types of things, you're going to go ahead and be a lot more strict with yourself. When you live in a free country, like we proved is the birthright of every entity on this planet, self-aware at least, If you want to talk about cows, go and fix the cows where the cows do better to go ahead and keep the land going properly out west. Go talk about people. You can eat meat every single day and not use more than one planet. You just have to know how to do it properly. And no one wants to hear that because they're stuck on the 55-mile-an-hour, let's go down the street equally, instead of understanding that the rules are equal. The basis is equal. The access is equal. But sometimes you want to go ahead and create a bike lane so that way everybody can be more equal on the road. So that way people don't get pissed off on either side. Sometimes you want to go ahead and say, hey, I see that motorcyclist up there and I see a little bit of grass clippings. I bet that person's going to swerve, therefore I'm going to slow down. Instead of standing on principle saying it's 55 miles an hour and he's making a left turn. That's part of defensive driving. But it's also part of defensive living. It's also part of being a leader instead of a boss. It's also part of being an aristocrat. It's also part of being a good comrade. It's also part of being a good capitalist. It's part of about using a fascist system. It's also part about using a libertarian system. It's part of doing all these type of different things. It's also about part of, if you do have a king, of being a good subject to that king from putting on the crown type of perspective. I don't want people saying, yes, sir. I want people saying, hey, there's shit in the road. You see what I'm saying? And I'm not going to tell people, excuse me, you spoke out of turn. I'll say, thank you for letting me know there's shit in the road so we don't step on it, You find this a lot in Generation X, who cannot quite comprehend what happened because there was a coup around 1968. But they can't quite comprehend what happened. They feel left out. They kind of have the Vietnam era type of feeling left out, feeling uncongratulated, but also have their hand caught in the cookie jar a little bit too. And they also have the just enough wages to feel like it's just good enough. Just enough opportunity. To where they current slide feels like disrespect and stupidity, especially when those people opt for quality. It's really easy to go ahead and remember Walmart the way it used to be and think, yeah, why can't people wear Walmart shoes? Instead of accepting that business is actually its own profession. And when you do that, you're able to go ahead and actually see that it is not necessarily the sourcing from China that's the problem. It is the fact that we don't give a crap. But it is also the fact that we do not source locally and we also do not do things uniquely. I remember going in as a kid getting these giant shorts. They fit my butt pretty well, fit my hips pretty well, thighs too. But they were long, they were boxy, they were nasty. But at the same time, they were also giant at the waist, and you could pull them out and walk around like hey, 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 like a clown type of situation. Short of doing that constantly, you first of all have a chance of sculpting your body into that shape. And excuse me. But you also have a chance of putting thoughts of this person does not have what they need, so therefore the less than into people's heads. Add that to fat phobia. You see where we're going. But you also have taken money out of the dressmaker's hands. You've taken money out of the local fabric maker's hands and stuff like that. And we forget just how much of that we used to have in the 90s and 80s. Still left. And if I can remember that, putting yourself in the position of somebody who was 20 in 1980, who doesn't really keep up and just thinks, yeah, okay, I just need a pair of shoes, whatever. It's really easy to imagine not really even waking up to what's going on because Walmart was good enough back then that they don't see what people are going through. I think it's approved in some ways, but in some ways it hasn't. And instead of having the illusion of choice, that is a falsified empire version of capitalism. That is not people actually breaking the stalemate and breaking the tyranny of monopoly to go ahead and actually sculpt experiences for each individual. At concierge level listening, and I don't mean those concierges that go, excuse me, that's a rude question, that's stupid, but actually ones that listen and actually make it work. Those people actually create a staircase for people not to act out, and a staircase for people to actually raise themselves out of stupidity. So when we do that, we're able to go ahead and actually, going back to a literary term, teach each children the way that they should go, and that because when they're old they will not depart from it does not mean that you teach them the way you think that they should go. It means that you take what is naturally theirs already, because when they're old they won't depart from it. So you might as well go ahead and cater to their natural abilities and interests. And body forms, the way that they're dressed, needs to be formed for their body as well. That's part of it. So if you're people of the book, that's an order. Do not piss off your children. That is an order. But at the same time, don't go ahead and be so scared of your penis. You go ahead and create this seacoast type of pedophile gang culture built around denying and depriving and over-rewarding because you're so terrified of scarcity and you're so terrified of penises and you're trying to warp the teachings of a social structure around what you experience. It is so much better to go ahead and realize that it's problematic laws that get in the way of relationships, but also the different interpretations are rooted in different experiences, and you can learn from these things. And the classical liberal side is both patriotism and liberal enough for the people who you think of as capital L liberals. You call me moderate, but the truth is that classical liberalism breaks the use of liberal incorrectly to describe people who, like, you say feminazis or whatever. There's a reason why we use the word feminazi. I'll get to that later. Barely being able to be confident is not where we're going. We'll look at the script kiddie version of the world instead of the actual aristocratic, I love what I'm doing version of the world. This goes back to what I was talking about before about the House of Lords. Coming from an American's perspective, it seems odd. But when you go ahead and give people the ability not to sit in class and fake their way through life and things like this, what you're doing is effectively saying that whatever this person is best fit for doing, whether it be welding to, creating video games, to being a business person, to doing law, to being a doctor, whatever this thing that they need to do is, that hereditary ability to do whatever that thing it is needs to be represented at the highest level. So there should be mechanics in the House of Lords. And you can kind of take that as the class system as well. But there also should be people who are very proud of being at the cutting edge of actual research science there as well. And there is. But there also are a few people who are just my douchebag cousin and needs to really take a seat. And since he's banned from Britain, I think we all agree with that. Please come for your people. They're awful and we need help. But at the same time also, when we think of these arguments and we think of these things that we are tired of quarreling about, one of the things that you can go ahead and do is actually realize we give more of a damn about you than you're showing for yourself when we say, hey, don't steal my art, make your own. Do you know what I'm saying? I'm saying I don't care about your connections and your power. I love my work. I fucking love my work. I love my work so much that I agree with you that it should be at that level. But I'm also saying that you should create your own work too because I believe that much in you. And that's where y'all are freaking out and forgetting. It's so easy to get imposter syndrome, and it's so easy to brat because you want something instead of earn it yourself. It is also so easy to feel like it is less worthy or worth it if it is not given to you. That's not just reflected glory, that's also wanting to be loved and wanting to look at something and go, I love who gave that to me. Have that relationship with yourself. After all, the people you look up to enough to steal from love you that much enough to go ahead and give you that tidbit of wisdom. Be more artistic. It's better scientifically and mathematically.